Hi everybody, welcome back to the New York Stock Exchange. You're watching Crypto Trailblazers, the NYSE plus CUBE, NYSE Wired plus CUBE series. We've been going all week. It's been fantastic. Ethereum has hit a new high this week and we're super excited about that. Ram Kumar is here. He's the core contributor at OpenLedger. We're going to talk about blockchain meets AI. Ram, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely, it's good to be here, yeah.
Why did you start this project?
That's a good question. So, we've been in the space from 2017. We started as a blockchain R&D company and also machine learning services, and we've worked with a lot of enterprises. This includes Walmart, Cadbury's, Viacom, and many other brands as well. What we understood, we built it as a service to provide solutions to enterprise, but there's no product out there which is like really scalable, which can bring together the aspects of data and like models. We were seeing ChatGPT happen. It was a huge rage, right? Everyone was talking about ChatGPT.
Right.
But we understood that AI is not going to be just with ChatGPT. It's not just going to be generic. It's going to become much more specialized. It'll go into very real-world use cases. Then you might need models, AI models, which power them to be much more specific and domain-centric to the domain that you're building for. And that's how OpenLedger was started, right? We understood that, okay, there's a lot of need for data, like proprietary data, but there's no protocol to bring people together to get rewarded for the data that they provide, and there is no no marketplace for all of this to happen, and that's how we started OpenLedger.
Makes so much sense. The power law we wrote years ago, the power law of Gen AI and the domain specificity was really where the action is going to be in enterprise AI. I have a note here, you were founded to bring transparency, interoperability, and ownership to digital value, and you're pioneering what you call payable AI. Can you talk about what that is? Explain that.
So if you take a look at any of these AI models or applications that we use, all of them are trained on internet data. This is the data that we contributed to the internet. We all donated that, right? We never got back anything out of it. So now is the time to enable users with knowledge, end user, skilled people or enterprises who have knowledge to contribute again to AI and to enable proprietary domain-specific models to be built. Now, as we were talking about this, right, there'll be real-world use cases that will start to emerge for AI. People will build models for trading, right? People will build AI models for healthcare, models for like transport and stuff. For all of this, humans have that knowledge, right? Humans have knowledge, skill on a particular subject, which is not on the internet. And the only way to get that is to encourage these humans to contribute that. And the only way they would do that is only if they get incentivized. Only if you get rewarded for something, you would go ahead and contribute it, right? AI has to become payable. AI has to become rewardable. And that's our motive. So everyone who's looking to build an AI model, if they need access to data, they could enable these users to contribute data on OpenLedger and then have this data to be provided to model developers. Model developers can access that, build these AI models, and use attribution to reward them back. If your data was useful in a model and the model had an inference using your data and the model made money, you should get a piece of that. That's our principle. And we've been doing this over the last 2 years. We've been building. We have 20 different projects building on us. We work with enterprises. All of them collected data from users across the globe, and then now they're able to reward them with our token. Once our token is out, they'll be able to reward them, and they'll be able to reward users sitting in US, sitting in South Korea, or India, wherever they are. If you have knowledge, you're going to get paid for it.
I love this story because, I mean, so much of the talk is around LLMs and algorithms, and it's amazing to me when I look at these models that are released. GPT-5 just came out. It's going to be, I don't know, months maybe before, I mean, it costs whatever, multiple billions to train, and it's only months of competitive advantage before another model comes out. And in fact, they're even struggling to sort of go beyond where they typically have. We've seen that. And everybody's so enamored of that, algorithms and models, where the real value is in the data. And that's it, we kind of joked, we called it LLM communism, right? Everybody has the sort of same access to the same answers and the same data. But now you bring in agentic and you bring in the proprietary data, that domain specificity, and there's real value there. So you've called these sort of AI models the next on-chain asset class. What specifically does that mean in financial terms? How are they going to be valued? Is it a two-sided marketplace that values them?
So with Bitcoin, we decentralize money, right? and Ethereum decentralized finance, right, with DeFi and all
Yep.
that. I think we are about to decentralize intelligence, right? Intelligence is the new thing. It's gonna be an era of new intelligence. People are gonna build very intelligent systems, and intelligence has to go to every person in the world, right? Everyone has to get access to it. Not only people who have money to spend for it, not only conglomerates which can use that. Intelligence has to get to people who needs that, it should become like a need, like how water and electricity is. I think that's how intelligence has to become. And for that to happen, you need to have a system which is completely transparent, which is completely open, and which is trustless, where anyone can contribute for this intelligence, anyone can access knowledge to build intelligence and get rewarded, get paid for it. And people who contributed and were be part of this process should get equally distributed and rewarded as part of the contributing either as data or someone is building a model. They have to be rewarded. That's the overall idea, right? If you start to talk about the larger enterprises out there, let's talk about OpenAI and all these larger enterprises who are building. I'm not here to say that centralized is bad and decentralized is good. Whatever happening with the centralized marketplaces, models and all that, that should still continue to happen. I think consumers will use a lot of centralized models, but then there should also be ways where a smaller developer who has a unique use case, who wants to build a model for a very smaller use case, he needs to get access to data which is free. He needs to get access to that, build models with that, and then if he makes revenue, then he can share back to the data contributors, right? That has to happen. We need to enable that. That's where the innovation really comes out, and we want to be that protocol that enables niche, specialized models to be built on top of us.
Again, I love the story. We recently, earlier this year, we wrote a piece, why Jamie Dimon is Sam Altman's biggest competitor.
Yeah.
And because Jamie Dimon has all this proprietary data, and then recently we just wrote how they're going to get there. We could have laid out a roadmap for that. The reason I bring that up is because what you just said is that if I'm not JP Morgan Chase, and I don't have their treasure trove of data, but I have some data,
Yep.
and I need to enrich that with other data,
Yep.
I would love to get access to that data, facile access, and in return, reward folks that provide that data. That's what you guys are enabling. So it feels like you're kind of changing the economics for people, for institutions, for data providers, and for organizations to add value with data.
Think of AI to be, I like to humanize AI, right? Like as humans, we all learn general knowledge through our schooling, and then we specialize in a subject that we want to become an expert in, right? AI models today are these general knowledge models which have a knowledge about the world because they were trained on internet data, right? But these models cannot be used as it is, right? You need to build these models to a particular subject, to a domain, make them expertise in that particular domain, and customize them to your own need. And if you want to customize them, then you need to bring in data that is among people, that is among skilled users, that is among people who have the knowledge in that particular domain. And we just want to encourage them to come forward, contribute, and get paid for it.
Well, it's interesting because OpenAI, before they announced GPT-5, announced an open
source model.
Open weights model, I'll call it. It's
kind of
open
entirely
source.
Open source, yeah.
So but it's open source, open weights. So, but my point being, you definitely need open weights to do what you just said, but you also need data. And everybody forgets about the data. I want to ask you what the role of transparency and auditability play. That's the inherent nature of the blockchain. Certainly we've got a much more friendly United States public policy, but you have EU, there's the EU AI Act, there's the markets and crypto assets regulations in Europe, so everybody's going to have their own regulations. So how does auditability address the concerns that regulators have?
There are two parts to this, right? One, we use transparency and on-chain verifiability to enable people to get rewarded. So every time data is contributed, if it's attributed within that model, like your model got access to the data, and if your data was used there, you get rewarded. That's one part. On the other side, when we work with enterprises, it's very important we use attribution to prove how data is being used within the model. Because let's assume a healthcare organization uses an AI model, and you use this model to get answers, and something goes wrong, a consumer used it, you want to figure out what data caused that inference to happen, that output to happen, right? Unless you have attribution, you'll not be able to pinpoint to that data point that caused that, and you can't remove that poisonous data point. So it's very important that models become much more open, much more explainable and transparent. And that's the other thing that we're building, right? Apart from using attribution to reward people, we want to use attribution to showcase how a model works, how to open up this black box that is there. And that also comes down to various other regulative use cases as well. In EU, there is so much need to comply with GDPR. They really want to know what really happens in these models, what kind of data goes in. So we work with a couple of larger enterprises in Europe, which work with us very specifically for this attribution that we're solving, because they want to know what really happens in the model. If they're going to rely on an AI, make the decisions based on that AI, they want to know how this AI works. They want to know what data is causing that AI to give that inference. So I think that's very important. Making sure the models are open and transparent is very important as it gets to be used in every part of our life.
Yeah, the openness is critical. And when you think about a power law, the open source nature of that, it pulls the torso up. It sort of changes the dynamics pretty dramatically. And again, the LLM business is a brutal business. And maybe if one of the big model labs achieves AGI, they'll figure out the business model around it at massive scale. But the real value is win the data and then enabling agents to sort of access that data. So how do you see crypto native AI agents affecting things like DApp composability? I mean, obviously you see it in finance. And then, but more broadly, in enterprise workflows, which people are rethinking entirely.
So think of agents to be like actual humans who do the work, the brain being the model and the agents which does the work. You want to make sure that you have the agents on a leash, right? Like how humans are bound by contracts, like physical contracts, agents have to be bound by like smart contracts, digital contracts. Only then you would know how these agents would work. And then all these agents are actions of a model's output. So if something goes wrong, there is a malicious activity, you can actually trace back on us to figure out which data is causing that, right? You should always figure out what really is causing the impact. There's always a trail back, right? And having that model to be open, having a transparency on what kind of data sets goes in, is very important to make sure that we have these agents in check. I'm sure that agents are going to be the biggest transaction on blockchain, right? More than humans, there will be more transactions by agents. And we are at a place where I think we are discovering the potential of agents to be used in trading, especially like DeFi and all that. There is still a lot of human in the loop. I think going forward, we would start to see more of this being completely autonomous as these models get better, as you're able to build much more domain-specific models which are less hallucinating, and then you could start using them for various use cases.
When you think about RWA, real-world assets being tokenized, what are the similarities and differences between real-world assets and intelligence being tokenized?
Yeah, so in a real-world asset is basically you're bringing what's happening on the real world, you're bringing that provenance on-chain, right? You're able to track who's the owner, you're able to showcase that on-chain, you're able to see how it's being traded and stuff. Similarly, in intelligence, you're basically showing who has that knowledge, who's the owner of that data. We're able to show the provenance of that. We're able to show how it gets into a model, and we're able to show whether they're getting rewarded. So we track the provenance, how you would track in a real-world asset, and we also make sure this intelligence is tokenized, right? Only if it's like rewarding you, it's useful. Same with RWS. If it's able to generate yield, it's able to generate rewards. Very similarly, we want to generate rewards for the knowledge that you provide. So I would say those are the parallels we are trying to bring in. They're tokenizing the asset that is in real world. We're tokenizing the asset that's in our brain. Yeah.
I want to ask you the why now question.
Yeah.
Some of the visions that we see, AI, crypto, obviously a lot of hype. Great vision, but sometimes the execution isn't always there. Why now? What makes payable AI sort of feasible from both a technical and a market perspective?
Yeah, I think 2 years before, there was a lot of need for compute. Everyone wanted to get access to compute, and there's a lot of decentralized compute companies that came on board. They actually solved a problem. Like for us, when we were a startup 2 years back, we needed access to compute. And AWS would charge us like $7 per hour, right? And if you use a decentralized compute company, it will charge us probably like $1.50 per hour, right? So the access to resources was so much high that you're able to bring down the cost so much. So very similarly, there is a need for data now because models have reached a point where they're too generic. They can't be used in real world use cases. You need to build models for various aspects of AI. You need to build models of various real world use cases that you are discovering where AI can be used. Then you need access to a lot of data. Not only like internet data, we spoke about this, we need access to proprietary data, which is among people, you, me, and it is among enterprises, right? And I think now people are getting to know about AI more, like how internet happened, and people understood that if they contribute content to internet, like on YouTube and all that, they're going to get paid. The better the content, they're going to get paid more. Very similarly, if they understand more about AI, they would know that if you contribute data, if you contribute knowledge to AI, you're going to get rewarded, right? So there is a point where there is a demand from the from the model developers, and there is a need for that from the suppliers as well. People have understood that they can monetize their data. So now is sort of like the time where data is very much needed, and there's no protocol out there which is connecting the model developers to the data contributors, right? And we've been working on this over the last 2 years. The biggest problem we are trying to solve is the attribution side, right? While we can build a system where you could say that you contribute data, I'm going to pay you upfront. There's nothing going to be for you to get rewarded more than that. It's going to be like a one-sided marketplace. People are not going to be interested to contribute more and more.
Right.
For this to happen on a cyclic manner, like how YouTube happened, you need to have a system where they can view how the data is being used. They still retain ownership to that, and they get constantly paid, right? So for us to crack that, we needed to crack attribution, right? So that's what it took us 2 years, and I think now we are at the right place. There is demand for data. There is knowledge among people. They have awareness about AI. I think it's just things are falling into place.
So double click on that. So I'm interested in how OpenLedger deals with the attribution layer.
Yes.
Is it just because it's a two-sided market, the market decides? Is it algorithmic, a combination?
So what really happens here is that if someone is looking to build an AI model, they sort of like throw up a contract, like a bounty, asking for data to be contributed to that particular model. And they write a rule engine on what kind of data set has to be contributed.
And I'll pay X.
And I'll pay X and stuff. And data contributors come forward, contribute data, and their data is accessed, it is processed, and if their data was used in a model, they get paid a portion of the reward that can probably come to them. And then when the model gets developed and the model gets used on OpenLedger and API is accessible, users get, like how they access ChatGPT, they use these models, they pay for the inference, app developers get access to the model, they pay for the API access that is there. All the revenue the model developer makes is now shared between model developer and the data contributor. And it's not just shared as it is, it's algorithmically shared, right? Every time an inference happens, a model throws an output. On that output, we figure out whether the data that was contributed was actually useful. Did it have any kind of impact? If it had an impact, and we measure the impact that is there, and they get paid proportionally. Let's say there is an output coming in, it got paid for $1, and the data that you contributed was like 70% of the impact. You get probably like 6 cents or 5 cents out of that, right? And the remaining goes to the model developer. So all of this happens on chain, all of this is automated, and that's how attribution really works on top of OpenLedger. We use 2 papers, one called Infinigram, which is a research paper that was written, it is an open source research paper, another one called DataInf. So it took us almost 2 years to bring down the attribution time from about 20 seconds to under like 2 seconds. And so we batch all of this inference together, and then we pay out rewards to the data contributors on a daily basis, right? So that's what really happens over here.
Okay, so you ensure that it's the contribution is accurate.
Yes.
You essentially calculate it in near real time,
Yes.
2 seconds, and then you pay out at the end of each day like a market would.
Yeah, very similarly, because
Awesome.
we want to be a player where we can enable this to happen in a very cyclic manner, right? The model developers are there, they need access to data. Data contributors have knowledge, they want to contribute, get paid for it. So we want to be a bridge which lets this happen in a trustless manner, where people contribute data, model developers uses that, they get reward, they get revenue, they get paid, then they share back with the guys who contribute for that.
So you obviously have exposure to some large enterprises.
Yes.
So and they're putting big investments into AI.
Yes.
What's your pitch to get them to sort of tokenize their intelligence for their models, their data pipelines? What's the value add for them to go on chain?
Yeah, so it's like there are 100 other fine-tuning companies sitting in Silicon Valley that you're fighting for, right? The biggest difference between us and them is that we provide attribution, we provide openness of the model. If you're building an AI model on top of OpenLedger, you get access to see how the model works. Like based on how the data is getting used in the model, you get to see the entire provenance on chain. You're able to view that this is the data that went into the model. You're able to view if the model throws an output, which particular data caused that. That openness and auditability, no one else provides that. We're the first guys to do that. And enterprises need that, right? If something goes wrong, they need to trace back and see what really happened there, right? We work with one of the largest e-commerce players out there, which we'll announce soon about. And we're building a customer support model for them. This AI model is going to power their agent, which is going to replace their chatbot. Now, when customers chat with this and say that, hey, I lost my item, I couldn't get it, I did not receive it and stuff, and the model, gives out an answer and it is not very accurate, and the guy is going to sue you, right? He wants to really figure out what really happened here. What did this AI provide such a bad answer? Like, what was the poisonous data that caused this to happen? They need that auditability. If it's a human, I could see what really went wrong. But in AI, if I don't have clarity of what really happening inside, I would not be able to audit this, right? So for enterprises, making sure this model is open, making sure the data is transparent is very important for them, and that's why we work with large enterprises as well.
Thank you for that. What's your North Star? We're here at the end of the decade. Where do you see this going? What's the vision?
I think in about 10 years, we want to build a platform where every person in the earth has access to intelligence, and if we're able to even solve 10% of the problem to get to a place where we're able to access people across the globe, that's a very great achievement, right? I think that in the era of intelligence, everyone is the productivity and the things that we're going to achieve is going to be humongous, and we want to be a player where we can make sure that every human gets rewarded or every human gets access to intelligence because of us.
Well, the TAM is
huge.
It's infinite, and it's
huge.
all intelligence. I mean, so Ram, thanks for coming on. Congratulations on getting the project off the ground, and
thank you.
We'd love to have you back and watch your progress.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you for watching Crypto Trailblazers, the NYSE Wired plus theCUBE's ongoing series. My name is Dave Vellante. John Furrier is also here. We'll be right back from the New York Stock Exchange right after this break.